Today is Easter Sunday. Which I suspect gives priests and ministers across the country a lot to talk about. And I feel always deeply informed by the Christ teachings, by the extraordinary gift of surrendering to the mission, standing in the Garden of Gethsemane and, in a sense, asking not to have to drink from this cup, and yet knowing that what was ahead of him had to be embraced, surrendered to. I suppose that he could have run away. He could have gone elsewhere, said no, and we would not be sitting here today talking about him. But his acceptance of the mission, of that which was before him, his surrender to that, was an extraordinary teaching for all of us, really. So many of us look to the reward of that surrender to death and transfiguration, resurrection, the promise of life hereafter. Because we're also reward-driven. But the extraordinary teaching preceding the reward is something that Rudy taught as well, and I think many people do, which is the word surrender. Saying yes. Surrender is often perceived as a passive act, a weakness, a giving up, giving in. And I think it's been dissected by people for millennia, really. What does it mean to surrender? And passive surrender is certainly part of the equation, where you suddenly realize that it's not up to you. It's not in your hands, it's not you who does it. That something greater is at work. And it's not easy to arrive at. Rudy even puts at the core of his teaching this idea of asking for help to surrender. Because he knows we really can't do it by ourselves. We don't really have the capacity, because surrender means to let go of the one thing that is most dominating our existence, which is our ego-minded drive to be special, unique, separate, independent, our own master. Surrender means you're not your own master. There is a mastery above and beyond you that flows through you. And finding your way to that mastery is really finding a way towards surrender, not toward doing something egoistically, not to achieving something uniquely yours, but to letting go of the you to allow you to become part of the great whole, the oneness. You surrender to something greater than your ego mind, something greater than your sense of separate self. And you ask help of it, because we are so small and so incapable in so many ways of achieving very much through the ego, through the separateness of our being. So when you ask for help to surrender, you're really asking for help for the vast wisdom and knowledge and energy of the universe to come through to guide you and to help you construct your life. Passive surrender is really a way of allowing yourself to receive something that is greater than you. But there's another component to surrender, which I think is really, really important, and I'm going to call it active surrender. Active surrender is doing what you're told to do, what you're led to do, what you're inspired to do, what you are directed to, shown as a possibility in your life. Active surrender is not passivity. Active surrender is taking the direction, taking the commandment, taking charge, and doing in the world what you have been given to do. Now, most of us look at that as a long-term idea, that there's something big to accomplish, that there's something massive waiting for us, or something specific like I am going to have children, or I'm going to build a career, or I'm going to become wealthy, or I'm going to become famous, or whatever these driven forces are that have inspired so many people. That often is generated more by the ego mind, in a sense, which is not disconnected from the great whole, but it is part of it, but it is a kind of me separated from everything. And we look to these grand designs in our lives of what am I supposed to accomplish? What am I here for? What is it about? And if we don't seem to find that, we feel like failures. We feel like imposters. We feel like we couldn't really pull it off. We feel rejected by our own self. We feel incompetent. All of these horrible thoughts and feelings coming at us. And the grand design for most people often never even arrives. You know, I know so many people who grow up saying, what am I supposed to do here? Why am I here? And they cannot find an answer. You know, go to school, you'll figure out it when you're in school. And you go to school and you don't figure it out. I don't know what I want to do. I don't know where I want to go. You know, I was very lucky. I mean, I knew at the age of 5 what I wanted to do. I thought everybody did, but I realized much later on that most people do not have a clue. What am I supposed to do? The great design of your life sometimes comes into play and sometimes it doesn't. But let me tell you what you are supposed to do. It's really pretty obvious, but it's not always clear. And that is what's in front of you. That's what you're supposed to do. Now, what do you do with what's in front of you? What is it that's in front of you? I mean, every minute is something different, to be honest. Every second of your life, there is something there. It may appear to be sort of empty and non-involving, like you have nothing on the calendar for the day. There's nothing basically important that you have to accomplish. Maybe you had to call your mother, or you had to do, go shopping. And you think of that as being, well, that's beside the point. That's just the usual. But let me just try to take that word usual out of the equation. The usual is what's in front of you. The usual. I have to get up and I have to make breakfast. I have to brush my teeth. I have to take my meds if you take meds. If you have to take a shower. I mean, the routine. That is what's in front of you. And mostly in your mind, you have completely thrown that away as being not part of the grand equation, like what I'm supposed to be when I grow up, or how famous I want to be, or how recognized, or how satisfied by my, whatever it is you think you're going to be satisfied by. And so forget the shower, forget the breakfast, forget getting the newspaper, forget reading, just none of those things seem to count because they're so minuscule and repetitive and they're every day. And so why would I care about that stuff? And yet my suggestion is true surrender is being open to doing the thing in front of you with a kind of awareness that it's there for a reason. It's there to nurture you. It's there to fill you, even possibly with joy. It's there to let you know you're alive, to let you know this is really happening. If you're just waiting for the TV show that night, or if you're waiting to go to the movies or someone to call you or whatever your thing is, you're going to miss all of the minuscule realities that are erupting in front of you. Now, I am guilty of all of the things I'm describing, of spending years dismissing all of the minutiae of life as though it wasn't important. And only recently have I started to truly understand, if that's the right word, enter into a relationship with that which is alive now. It is moment to moment to moment. It is not ever involved in the next moment. It's only involved in this one. And it's bizarre how interestingly the next moment arises. You don't have much to do with the fact that you have to sit up in bed in the morning and put your feet on the floor and walk to wherever you go, the bathroom, the toilet, whatever. You don't have a lot to do with that. It's all just kind of happening. But you can suddenly pay attention to that. You can pay attention to what it means to stand up in the morning. Now, trust me, I know most people don't think about it, but at a certain age, it's a miracle to stand up, to be able to actually get up out of bed. It's like, oh, because it's effortful. You feel the muscles having to work. You feel things that used to be so smooth and simple. Now they're all like, wow, I got to hold on to the table to get up. And you watch yourself do it and you go, ooh, I'm standing. And it actually feels like wonderful just to stand. And the walk to the bathroom is a little angular for me now. It used to be really smooth. Now it's a little wobbly. And I go, I'm doing it. And every little element comes at me like, oh, wow. Brushing my teeth, the explosion of the peppermint feeling, the feeling of my teeth and my gums and all of the aliveness in my mouth. Of course, it's always been there. It's always been there. But now it's like, oh, it's like something to attend to. It's like, this is really kind of amazing. And you can even go into who made the toothpaste and who came up with peppermint flavor and who came up with having a glass that could hold the water that could actually go in my mouth, and the gargle that feels so wonderful, and the spitting out of all of that excess peppermint just when it was starting to get a little unpleasant, and it leaves a fresh, wonderful taste. And this is just the very beginning of your day. You have surrendered to the routine. You have surrendered to what is, and you don't even know you've done it. You have engaged it. You have become an active participant in the day. The difference is you are either awake to it, alive to it, appreciative of it, or you're not. And it is absolutely possible to go through what people call the drudgery of their life, never, ever stopping to see the wonder and the miracle of these simple, obscure nothings in our life that are really everything. They are our life. They are it. If you have a meditative life, if you have been lucky enough to discover stillness, if you have been granted the gift of sitting quietly in yourself, and you do that after you've gone to the bathroom and after you've brushed your teeth, you sit in front of an altar, a candle, eyes closed, whatever it is you do. We do eyes open meditation, but it doesn't matter. It's just sit still and tune in. So if you just missed the brushing of the teeth and all of that stuff, tuning in will allow you an opportunity to start to get there, to start to feel your way into something. And what you may feel when you sit still, and you've all been here, is the calendar, the time. Oh my God, I've only got 10 minutes to sit here. It's not enough time. Oh, I've got to do this today. I got to do that. But if you can let go of all that and find the deep, deep, deep penetrating stillness inside you, you start to feel alive. And you start to feel like a day is rising. It's rising, and I am aware of it. I am part of it. And if you feel obstructed when you sit there and you feel noisy and you feel distracted, you actually can do this asking for help to surrender, to let go so that you can meet the day from a place of depth and of awareness and consciousness, so that it doesn't pass you by and you end up going to bed and not realizing you just had a whole day. You just had a universe of experience in your life that was available to you that you didn't see. Meditation is connecting to all of that flow, that uprising of life. And then when you get up from meditation and you walk into the day, and you are awake to it. You know, I think I've told you all this. I eat peanut butter and mostly raspberry or strawberry or peach jam on the toast that I make. I have a level of excitement in the peanut butter and jam. First of all, the peanut butter by itself is amazing. So once I spread it, I wipe it off the knife so I can taste it, and then before I put it in the jam so it doesn't get coated in peanut butter. Then I put it on and then I taste the jam and peanut butter together, and then I can't wait to sit down at the table and actually eat that. And I have a cup of tea or a cup of coffee, and I'm like, it cannot get better than this. It cannot. Of course it does get better. It just keeps going on. But it's so easy to go, done, get to work, get on, whatever your thing is, and I'm telling you, slow it down and be present. Okay, on the way from the peanut butter to the table, there's a piece of something left on the floor by your grandson yesterday. Whatever it is, you don't even know. You can walk by it and say, oh well, Blanche will pick it up later. Or the cleaning lady will come tomorrow and she'll pick it up. And something in you goes, no, 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 no. If it's there, it's yours. If it's in front of you, it's yours. And something in me used to resist that, going, I don't want to do this. I don't like having to stoop down while I'm holding my peanut butter. But another thing that's starting to take over for me is, this is what is there for me now. And I bend down and I pick it up and I take it and I drop it in the garbage. It's so small. I know it seems like nothing, but the triumph of saying yes to the moment is so satisfying. The willingness to give yourself over to what's in front of you, whether it's a crumb on the floor or whether it's the fact that the traffic in front of you is not moving, or the fact that the people who were supposed to come for dinner can't come. Whatever the thing is, you go, Or people show up who you didn't expect. Yeah. And this was not on the agenda. A phone call comes and completely throws your day off course. When you start to live in the moment, every one of these occurrences are part of something so vast, so unexpectedly present, that you realize these events are creating your life. Your life is made up of these micro moments that you are missing because you're trying to look for the grand design and the stuff that is working and isn't working and disappointing and frustrating. I'm telling you, the refuge of life, the surrender of life, is the acceptance of the moment. This piece, this piece, this piece. I know it seems somewhat linear, but after a while it's not even linear. It's just stuff. It's just stuff rising up, coming at you, rising up from inside, your own resistance coming up and going, ooh, wow. And then you realize, accept that, open, stop rejecting, stop resisting, stop fighting, take a breath. And you begin to have this sense of enormous flow, this enormous availability to this creative universe that is erupting moment to moment, micro moment to moment within you and around you. If you are saying yes to it, it creates a level of non-resistance and flow and joy and ease that beats the alternative. Walking around angry, disappointed, depressed, why didn't I get, why it should have been, what could have been, all of that falls away because the moment is so full, it's so rich, it's so much the refuge of life. I cannot express that enough. The entire spiritual journey that you think is perhaps reaching into some ultimate something is really reaching into this microsecond of being. That's the spiritual journey. It's the absolute here and now, not in some sense of it having any meaning or value in the next moment, because you cannot make one moment lead into the next. It will do it all by itself. All you can do is sit in this moment and go. You can do it passively, and you can do it actively. Actively means saying yes to the thing that just happened, or that is happening. And yes, that can be hard. If you're standing in the Garden of Gethsemane and you're being told to hand yourself over to or allow yourself to go toward your own crucifixion, that is a very different active surrender than eating a piece of peanut butter or a piece of toast. But our whole life is leading us to the grand surrenders that we must accomplish. The grand surrenders are the ones that don't make sense, that affect everything about your life, that are global in some way, that affect massive change, that often are surrounded by loss and grief and fear and doubt and pain. Those are the surrenders that the little tiny moments prepare you for. Because every one of those great events will actually be a moment-to-moment reality. That's all they are, moment to moment. And some of those moments are unbearable and cause great fear and great loss. I say this often, but Christ on the cross was abandoned in his mind by his Father. Why have you forsaken me? The pain was unbearable, and there was no release. There was no anything. The acceptance of that moment, the surrender to that moment, provided nothing but more pain, more horror on some level. And we don't know how to put ourselves into that space because it's too horrific to imagine. On the other hand, as I say very often, there's a clue to something that took place with Christ on the cross. He is hanging in unbearable agony that we cannot imagine, and asking why he's been abandoned. And then he says, "Forgive them, for they know not what they do." How did he get from the horror and the pain to that act of forgiveness? How do you arrive at that? It will not happen necessarily just by chance. It is an acquired, we'll call it a skill and grace. The skill is asking for help to surrender. The grace is help comes. It's hard to know what that help was exactly in terms of how it arrived, what happened to the brain cells in the middle of all that pain. Did that pain evaporate? Did he suddenly transcend the material plane? Very likely. But something happened that said, "Forgive them, for they know not what they do." Compassion arose for everything and everyone around him in the midst of the agony that they had put him in. This is the great teaching. This is the great teaching, because we all face some ultimate agony. We all do. If maybe not in physical pain, or maybe, but we face it in terms of the loss of everything that we have loved and known, that we took for granted, that we believed was familiar, that we live our life to have another minute of. That's going to go away. And we are either going to feel, "Why have you forsaken me?" which is what I think many people feel, because they don't know where to turn or what to do, or you arrive at a place of saying, "Thy will be done," and something happens and this compassion for all of life, including you, wafts into something vast, and this next moment happens. The promise of the Christ journey is that the next moment is as alive as this one, as beautiful as this one, and it's another moment. Death may have occurred, finality may have occurred, but the promise that the next moment occurs is what really is the magic and mystery of the teaching. But it's also the reward on some level, and many of us look for the reward. But what I would say is, forget the reward. The miracle is the moment that you surrender, whatever happens. Surrendering to this moment is everything. The practice is every moment, every day. Meditation leads you into a deep version of that. Spiritual life opens you up to the possibility of it. But reality is every second of every day is an opportunity to live the thing we are teaching here, which is surrender. Passively and actively surrender and say yes to this exquisite truth of this moment, which is always, almost always, bearable. Sometimes exquisitely beautiful, sometimes transcendent, sometimes glorious, sometimes profoundly mundane. But just say yes and yes and yes. Surrender, surrender. And I will tell you, from my experience as it becoming more and more clear to me, the joy of the moment-to-moment reality is beyond any understanding until you do it. Until you do it. Accept the thing that's in front of you. Do not fight it. Do not be angry. Do not think it should be otherwise. It's not supposed to be otherwise. It's supposed to be what it is, or it wouldn't be arising. So just go, help me to surrender. Help me to surrender. And then surrender. Asking for help is not the end of it. Surrendering is the end. And it's only the end for that second, because you do it again and again and again and again until, as Rudy said, it would be like a muscle. It just opens and opens and opens, surrenders and surrenders and surrenders. And then these amazing symphonic days go by, and you live in this life of exquisite, exquisite, long-lived, vast, huge, long hours of absolute beauty and amazement. Trust me. It really is that. It's not hypothetical, it's not fantastical, it's not a dream existence, it's the actuality of your life. Your surrendered, open, living, breathing life is what you've been here for. It's why you're here. It's the gift you've been given. Open the gift. Open it. This is not a mistake. Reality is every moment. Meditation leads you to a place beneath or beyond reality as we know it, beyond the manifested, and allows you to embrace the unmanifest along with the manifest, which is rich with understanding and clarity and brilliance, but it's also ultimately this incredible, incomprehensible truth, and the only thing you can do with this unknowable reality is surrender to it, passively, actively. Surrender. That will give you everything that you've ever wanted or need, because it's all present now. So happy Easter, everybody. Thank you. Any questions today?
Wow. I don't know how to form the question. How do those big dreams, whether they be for self or for altruistic, how does the moment fit into that, or they fit into
The moment builds you to those dreams. If you give way to the moment and you open to the moment and you have a projection of something down the road and you really open and surrender, you will find all of these moments, if you engage them, if you say yes, if you're willing to say yes to them, will lead you to those dreams. Whether they fulfill the dreams or not I mean, there's no predicting. I lived a life where it did. I mean, I have had every dream realized, on and on and on and on. And it took a lot of surrender. It took a lot of risk taking. It took marrying a woman who was willing to risk with me and raise children together and to carry out a life that was, you know, demanding and challenging and all of those things that happen. But there is a constant sense, evolving even as I speak, of the surrender to what needs to be done. The fact that you have to work your ass off, the fact that you have to move from a secure place to an insecure place because that's where the life energy will be waiting for you. You know, our move from, you know, little DeKalb, Illinois to Hollywood with no money, nothing in our pockets at all, but Blanche saying, I'm not staying married to you if you don't follow your dream. You know, these kinds of actions, surrendering to the possibility, is everything. It's everything, and it takes unbelievable courage, but that courage comes down to the minuscule, not just to the large. But the large will arise in you because it's part of what gets planted in the system, your large dreams. And some of us get to those dreams and some of us don't. But the reality is, and having gotten so many dreams realized, that the best part is my peanut butter and jelly sandwich in the morning. Trust me. I know that doesn't make sense. You know, here, an Oscar here and a peanut butter and jelly sandwich here. I will go for the peanut butter and jelly sandwich because that Oscar is an inert thing sitting on a table in my bedroom. And the peanut butter and jelly sandwich comes every day, and I love it. And the joy of it is enormous. I wouldn't discount the Oscar if that comes in your life. If you have a career that satisfies, it's wonderful. But most people, they look at my career and think, oh, you were so lucky. My career had one fundamental element in it, which was called ego destruction. Everything I tried to do in Hollywood was under the gun of and under the manifestation of people tearing it apart, bringing in other writers, changing this, changing that, you know, saying this was no good. I mean, it went on and on. It was an unending challenge, and I had to meet every day with, okay, sure, have someone else do it. Okay, it's all right. Okay, I mean, I had to learn moment to moment to moment to go, I surrender. And I learned it because Rudy told me that that's what I had to do. And he said, take a deep breath, hold it in your heart for 10 seconds and really ask for help to surrender, because otherwise you're not going to get it. You're not going to find it. The hope that you're looking for, the result that you're looking for comes from within. It comes and expresses itself outward. It's not really coming from outside. It's something that arises. And that surrender, that new life energy, that extraordinary sense of being arises every day. In truth, there's no inner and outer, and that's a whole other discussion, but it manifests. And manifestation is an unbelievable gift to us, or why would we even be here? Why bother? Why bother? Who cares about Oscars and peanut butter and jelly? I do. There's a reason I came for those things, and I got both. And one comes every day, and one comes once in your lifetime. That's a good lesson. I don't discount the value of it. It taught me lessons, but the real lesson of my career was that my ego was ultimately shattered down to enough of a kind of a fluffy little nothing that at one point, sitting unexpectedly, something went, and it was gone. It blew it apart. And it left me with peanut butter and jelly. And I have total gratitude for that. That's all I can tell you. So, not to not have great dreams and great plans and great ambitions, that's what life is built on. And satisfying it is a great thing. But it will never take care of the minute-to-minute joy of brushing your teeth and everything else if you can learn that that actually is joyful, actually is meaningful. It's alive and present tense. That's everything. Surrender to the present tense. That's what you're supposed to do. That will give you great comfort, and ultimately it is your salvation.
So I have, I think, a similar question. to work really hard, when you have to work really hard, when I have to work really hard, I sometimes overwrite myself in order to work hard, like to meet a deadline. And so I overwrite what I want, I don't know, it just feels like I have to become really present to the thing I'm working on, but really not present to the other parts of me.
Well, I mean, while you're writing, you're present to that. If you have to take a drink of water in the middle of all that, you can actually go,
Yeah.
You can't be present to 20 things at the same time. It tends to be a fairly focused experience unless you're just sitting in the park. And then it's different. But if you have to do focused work, I mean, when I was a writer, I had to write every day. I had to write every single day, hours every day. And nobody said you have to show up to work and punch a card. If I didn't motivate myself, it didn't happen. So it's really effortful.
Right.
And you have to surrender. That's why I call it active surrender. You surrender to the thing that has to be done. You surrender to the work and you give everything to it. And then there comes a point where you're done and you go have a peanut butter sandwich or whatever you choose. And then that's over and you have to go back to work. And you don't go, oh God, I have to go back to work. You go, I have to go back to work. You surrender to the demand over and over. Life makes a lot of demands. A lot of them are not fun. The Garden of Gethsemane was not fun. Your having to go to work does not equal that particular moment, but it is of the ilk. It's something you don't necessarily want to do, but it will pay the bills. It will keep you going. It will, it'll give you a life. So yes, we have to surrender to all of the stuff that life brings. The other thing is to just resent it, resist it, be angry at it, hostile about our lives, angry at everything around us. That's a choice, but it's not surrendered. It's an opposition to what's going on. Opposition is really a source of unbearable suffering, which people do to themselves all the time. Not being oppositional, surrendering is the way to have it all pass through you without it being cloying, angry, angular, unpleasant, difficult, and ultimately depressing. This is like, oh, okay, I can do this. And you jump in and you do the work. And if you do the work, life happens. We don't have a choice, really. I mean, the choice we have is objecting, resisting, and being frustrated, or going, okay, I accept, I surrender. You may see surrender as a negative thing, but I can only tell you moment to moment that it doesn't play as negative. It just makes life easier. It's absorbable. It's simpler. It's more pleasurable. There's still, there's big existential questions of why this even. Why do I have to do one or the other? I mean, you can go into those realms. If you want to have those discussions, it's something else. But the fact is, you're here in a body, in a life, and this stuff's happening. Either you go, I surrender to it, or I fight it. That's it. And the ultimate spiritual journey is beyond surrender in a certain sense, but it doesn't absolve you as long as you're biologically encased in a body from the demands of being here. So surrender, active, passive, opposition, fight, resist, anger, hostility. And we see the manifestations of both all day long around us. And it's like most people, I'd say almost everyone I know, has not figured out how to do the surrender part, or even that it's an option. But I will tell you, the reason I sit here and teach is say, I'm going to put words to that idea. Words that came from my teacher, and I'm continuing that and spreading it around, and those who hear it will live a sweeter life. That's all I can tell you. It's a better life. And if you want to be oppositional, great, that's a choice. But I will tell you, it won't feel good.
Could you talk more about the musculature of surrender? That after you surrender, both passively and actively, and develop over time, what does that look like?
When I watched Joshua pick up Elijah, it's like, puts him on his shoulders. When I try to pick up Elijah, oh my God. And it's really hard. I'm old, and old makes it harder but I can still do it. At some point, surrender says, I can't pick you up anymore. Let's hold hands, which is what we do, and we go for these walks together. It's a different kind of musculature. When you're young, you can do it easily. When you're older, it's hard. And when you get to a certain point of knowledge, you go, I can't do that anymore. My muscularity is, I figured out how to relate to you without putting you on my shoulders. And Elijah and I went for this long walk, and I held his hands, and we're looking out for cars, and we saw a turkey that didn't, between us and a car coming, and it took off and flew in the air, and we never saw a turkey fly. And we're both like this together, and the muscularity of that moment was we were both arriving at this exquisite magic of a turkey literally flying, I mean, up in the sky, and we both witnessed it together, and that's what muscularity looks like. It's the gentlest, most present tense sharing of your ability to be a human being with someone else or with yourself. It doesn't look like, I can do this. It just looks like surrender to an amazing moment. I know that's an odd reaction because I think people want to hear it looks like great strength and great capacity, but we only have great strength and capacity at certain points in our life. The true capacity is surrender to the moment, holding hands instead of lifting up. That's muscularity, and it's surrender. And it's available, and it's as sweet as can be. Does that help? Okay. Is that it? Oops.
You talked a little bit, and I think I got the answer, but you talked about also surrendering to the opposition and then moving through it. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Well, it just makes sense. If you're fighting your own anger and your own oppositional state and your own resistance, you're adding resistance on top of resistance, and that just creates more suffering. It's really horrible. The only way to overcome your own anger at yourself for being resistant and for being lazy and for being frustrated and for being whatever the things are that people feel, the only way to overcome that is to finally just say, please help me, to surrender, meaning to let go of that state of being, that anger, that compounding of resistance, that compounding of anger at life. If you don't find a way to ask for help to get out of that, then you just keep making it worse. You know, I have friends who are in AA and the 12-step programs, and one of the first things that they say is, I am helpless. I need help. It's the same basic teaching. They can't stop their own self-destruction and their own unhappy behavior. They can't stop it. And I totally get that. Most people get in patterns that are so self-annihilating that they really cause enormous pain. And the only thing you can do is say, please, please, whatever this thing is that I don't even understand, please help me break this cycle and this pattern of my behavior, of my belief system, of my struggle. Let me break this pattern. And you go deep inside, and the voice within hears you. If you pay attention to that voice, it starts to open you up to salvation, to freeing yourself of yourself. But those who are in 12-step programs know it has to be done every day, and it has to be done every time the possibility of a drink or a drug or whatever comes into your mind, into play. It has to be constant. And if you can't do it constantly, then you can slip up. And if you slip up, there you are. For the 1200th time, you are back in the places you've been before, and then it gets harder than ever to do because you know how sloppy and how weak you are. And that's where people get into terrible life situations. Happens all the time. So somewhere along the way, you have to become strong enough to really, really surrender everything to this process. Surrender. And then you change and you become a new human being. And that new human being has to be supported consciously every day, or you end up back where you were. I call that yo-yo yoga. You break down a pattern and you create it again. You break it down and you create it again. The objective here is to finally free yourself of your objections, of your criticisms of yourself, of your obstructions of yourself. You just free yourself and you go into the salvation of this moment. I can do it. Not the next moment, this one. Get rid of the next moment. The next moment will arrive, and then you'll do it again. Oh, I can do it. Oh, I can do it. Oh, this is easy. This is sweet. Oh, I can hold hands with my grandson. I don't have to lift him up. Oh, I can do this. I can do that. It's a gentle muscularity, a gentle yes to the moment. You don't have to have huge capacity to deal with this moment. Unless this moment is, should I take a drink or not take a drink? Should I take that drug or should I not take that drug? Should I give in to anger and hostility or should I open my heart? If you're in that moment, then yeah, you may have to actually go, help me. Please help me. Please help me. Call somebody. Remind me, please, that I shouldn't do this. Remind me. Ask for help from somebody else. If you can't get help from God and the universe, ask another person. But ultimately, get that reinforcement that lets you surrender the urge to do something that is self-destructive, obstructive, and ultimately painful for you. And you can do it. We all can do it. It's proven. I mean, 12-step programs are amazing. This meditation practice is amazing. Sitting still quietly, learning how to open to the universe is amazing. Why not choose that path if instead of the path of, angry at life? It's just a kind of commonsensical thing, but most people are not terribly commonsensical. It's usually the path of least resistance, which leads to a lot of trouble.
Thank you.
Yeah, choose surrender.
The time that I met with you just alone, I think you talked about something where you're sitting and you're just letting go or releasing and you said
Yes.
you do that every day. Can you say that again?
Sure. There's an exercise that Rudy taught us called negative psychic tension release exercise. And this is the patterns that we let go of that we start to recreate again. And he said what you need to do is sit once a day for 1 minute. He said you could do it sitting on the toilet, you can do it walking down the street, you can do it at work. You let your hands dangle by the side of your body. You take in a deep breath. You hold that deep breath for about 10 seconds, and you ask inside for help to surrender, which is part of our basic exercise, but you say help to surrender, and then you add negative, essentially, you have to say negative, psychic tension. Please help me to surrender negative psychic tension. And he said you'll start to feel this weight, this thickness come out of your top of your head, your forehead, your temples, your cheeks, your jaws, your neck. It'll go through the top of your body, it will go down your arms into your hands, and then it will either drain in the atmosphere or it will collect in your hands. And if it collects in your hands, he said, shake them out and this energy will go away. Because if it collects in your hands, he said they'll feel like they're encased in cement. And if that happens, you'll really feel that. Get rid of it. And then these negative patterns break up and go away. So help to surrender is one thing, asking for help to surrender, but help to surrender specifically negative psychic tension. He even used to say negative psychic tension and congestion. And if you really can let go of all of that stuff, it drains away very quickly. 1 minute a day, that's all you need to do. And this stuff flows out, and these old patterns that want to sort of come back again, they're gone. You really free yourself of that. So it's very valuable practice. Okay, thank you guys for coming. Again, happy Easter. And next week we're in LA. Could you teach next week?
I think it's, I just taught last time.
Oh, would you
So-
teach? Okay, thank you. Okay,
Well, you had said Robin would teach next time.
did I?
After me.
Oh. Robin's not here. I'll get a hold of Robin. If she's not available, yeah, I would like you. Okay, thank you. Okay, again, thank you all.